The city of Seattle is now acknowledging, and they did in a document, but it's been released. Our friend Ari Hoffman got his numbers on it, that the city is finally acknowledging just how bad their staffing crisis is with police officers. They've lost over 700 officers since 2019. Of course, a lot of those fled during the Summer of Love and the defunding movement. There's only 913 police officers available for deployment in the city. They should have probably closer to 1,500. This is the lowest number of in-service officers since 1991. And of course, the city has grown exponentially since 1991, but we still have the same number of officers. So the question is all of that about to get even worse? The city just elected a socialist mayor, Katie Wilson, and not only is she a socialist, she's a police abolitionist. She's on the record a couple years ago saying we had to have a future without the Seattle Police Department. So I'm sorry, if I'm a cop in Seattle, I'm already dealing with a crappy political environment. Why am I going to work for a socialist? There's all these agencies around the state that are offering massive lateral bonuses. You can get like $35,000 as a qualified officer to lateral to a different agency. So the question is, are we about to see our public safety crisis get even worse? We asked Mike Solen, president of the Seattle Police Officers Guild, to join us on the show today to talk about it. First, let me just ask, have you spoken to Katie Wilson?
Post-election victory, no. I've been waiting for the attention to subside and then send communique. So just to congratulate her for her win. But before the election, yes, I have spoken with her.
Okay. Are you willing to characterize whether you found it a productive conversation?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my role as the SPOG president is regardless of political affiliations or whatever, I have to play the game, if you will, not trying to be flippant, but that's what it is. And I have to have relations, with either candidate to make sure that if they win, SPA can get off to a reasonable footing before it goes more positive or before it goes negative.
And I think people understand and appreciate the political nature of the job that you have to do. But at the same time, this is someone who not too long ago didn't just support police defunding. She supported police abolition. She said we need to move forward to a future without the Seattle Police Department. So how do you really work with someone who believes that your job and the jobs of your rank and file shouldn't exist?
Yeah, I don't believe that's her current position.
Convenient.
Convenient, of course. And I think some people that had that takeaway, I'm not speaking for them, but I think that that is obviously misguided. It might sound like a good soundbite to some of their radical supporters, but that's not mainstream yet. And I'd be shocked if she publicly said that. Now we'll see what her cabinet looks like in terms of people that are of influence and where they drive the bus in terms of policy. And if they start going down a path that is reflective of an abolitionist mindset, then we're going to go scorched earth.
Yeah, and that's what I struggle with is I'm always open to having people change their mind. I think we have to allow people the grace to be able to come to a different position and change their mind. But that is such, I'm sorry, but an asinine, otherworldly belief that we can do without a police department. And it's only 5 years ago. So I really struggle with, is that just, oh, I'm coming, I have a new position just because I'm running for office. So how do you really tell whether she's come off of that position or was just doing it for a campaign?
Well, first of all, having that kind of position is just dangerous in general.
Yeah.
And it's so appallingly absurd that I try not to even put stock to it. But how do they come off it? I think it's going to be reflective of who is in her cabinet. And again, I double back to what are their policies going to be, and the main evidence of their movement back to abolition is what they're going to do with the money, meaning where that money lands in terms of what activists have they put on the payroll, and I equate it to what grift is going to become apparent, and who are the people that are taking that money, and then more importantly, what kind of return are you getting on that product? And time again, as we saw in Kane County, that you got $1.5 billion that has just gone nowhere, or these NGOs that just swallow up the money and the community's like left holding the bag. So we'll see what happens in her cabinet. At least from the start, I have to remain optimistic, but I'm not a fool. I understand the price that an abolitionist mindset can put on to the constituents in this
Yeah.
community. At the end of the day, Brandi, your show is the undivided, and to me, it's what they're doing. If it's going to be negative, it'll be the divided Seattle once again. So I hope we don't go down that path.
At the same time, I mean, how does your rank and file feel about it? Because this is, again, someone who held that belief. You've already been hemorrhaging officers. And I know the city, and maybe you want to comment on this too, they're acting like, we're on a good trajectory, which we might be, but we still are like 700 officers short. So are you worried about losing officers just because they do not want to work for a socialist?
For sure. Yeah, I mean that's real. First of all, socialism never worked
Yeah.
anywhere. And I think it's a feel-good emotional mindset where, who wouldn't want free money? But at some point, money is going to dry up. And then who is holding the bag? Well, it's going to be the community, and you're not going to have enough cops because there's not going to be enough money to entice cops to want to be here. Right now, Brandi, we've done an effective job at the bargaining table to try to prop up at least the appearance, the financial earnings of cops in this city and the benefits, but that's really the only thing that's left. Then once you start drying up small businesses and then that tax base falls off, then the big corporations are left, and then they'll start leaving, and then it's just this march to decay.
Yeah.
And that's a big concern for the cops that are here. And we've got an aging police department. There's close to 200 cops that are eligible to retire right now, and you're looking at one. And some of the feedback I get is people are really worried that we're going backwards to the 2020 catastrophe that it was. And I've seen firsthand some of those people that had the hands on the pulse of the defund movement. I've seen in and around the city hall buildings that to me cause great concern.
I am worried about, I've talked about it on my show, and if you can feel free to disagree, I'm worried about the wokeification of police departments. Let me explain by what I mean by that. We had this sort of mentality in 2020, and then they set out to pursue and recruit based off that mentality. That's my position, is that they wanted people who, quote unquote, fit the communities they serve, but I really feel like they wanted people that fit an ideological makeup that they thought would be more progressive. Is the Seattle Police Department being wokeified through recruitment strategy?
Well, you cannot brush aside the incessant drumbeat talking point of change the culture. And we've heard that since what, 2012, more so 2017 and beyond. You should have 940. The problem is the police departments changed the culture. I am worried, Seattle specifically, of some people who would not necessarily have qualified to be police officers, say 10 years ago, are now are looking to become police officers and going through the background process. I can tell you that the background detectives are doing fantastic work, but there is some concern that people that wouldn't necessarily have met the cut 10 years ago are now getting out into on the team. And we've got to this could be a disaster in the coming years, which then plays into the activist talking points about how bad the culture is. False narrative from these activists, but rest assured, Spog's got our finger on the pulse, and any type of wokeification, if you will, if that's a term, or indoctrination before they become sworn people, rest assured, Spog steps in and we try to right the ship. And my last point on that, Brandi, and you're so right to have some concern. Even if somebody gets through and somehow is the indoctrinated socialist, they would be hard pressed to continue with that mindset, say 5 years into the job, because what they see and witness on the street really glorifies how socialist policies are a disaster.
Yeah. It's such a good point, because you can, we can believe all the police are the enemy and they're the bad guys and they're racist and all these things. Well, then you get a crackhead running at you with a knife and you have to shoot him, and you're like, well, I guess, maybe I had to experience it to understand what they go through. But, one thing that really quickly, also bothers me, and I'll just say, and this isn't about politics for me, by the way. I don't need like the entire police force to be conservatives, but to me, in Washington State and places like Oregon, one of the only institutions of government left that has been able to rise above partisan political talking points is the police force, right? Where we're going out there and we're doing our job and we're protecting the community without fear or favor. And I don't want them to become this arm, for lack of a better phrase, of the Democratic Party. But like, for instance, I see they passed this budget last week and they set aside $250,000 to hire more female officers. And I'm like, frankly, I just don't give a shit. I just don't like, I mean, maybe you feel differently about that. I don't know why we're spending in a police staffing crisis $250,000 specifically trying to find more female police officers. Shouldn't they just find anyone who's qualified and willing to come?
Yeah, but all we care about is merit.
Right? I'm just so over it.
I could care less about your race, gender, or your religion. I don't care. I don't even care what your politics are. Can we just get a quality human to do the job and let politicians do what they do, is the identity politic game, which I think is such a detriment to our society. Like, stop picking on cops. Stop trying to change the culture through identity politics. It's proven time and time again that is an absolute failure.
Let's end with this on a more positive note. I think we all have to hope that someone does a good job, because or else what are we resigning ourselves to? So what do you need from Mayor Katie Wilson in order, what is your membership need in order to do their jobs effectively and keep the city safe?
Have the courage to stand up to the woke ideologues who want to completely civilianize law enforcement. You're going to see, in my belief, if the people of the Herbolds of the world, if they get influence, which it's looking like they're getting influence, you're going to see the armed police force dwindle in the coming future. And you're going to see another financial grab to throw at civilians that I think, they have certain roles, but when it comes to stepping up to criminality and intervening in evil, you need a strong police force that can act in a manner accordingly to protect the public. Stop blaming police and let us do our jobs. We've proven time and time again, even under all this immense scrutiny, and I call it majority of it unreasonable. Sure, we're not perfect, but we really have a good police force here. Stop coming after us. I mean, you've done so much harm to this profession, and look at our entire state. Just let us do our jobs. And at the end of the day, it comes down to the average community member. You got to get off the bench. Just because you don't like a candidate, you got to pick the lesser of both. And your power, your voice is your ballot. And if you're on the bench and you don't get involved, well, shame on you.
Hundreds of thousands of people who decided that this election was not worth participating in, and now they're going to get, a socialist, for better or worse. Probably worse, my opinion, but I know that you need to be a little more diplomatic about that. So, all right, Mike Solen, president of the Seattle Police Officers Guild, we appreciate your time and best of luck to you and your officers.
You're the best, Brandi. Thank you.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, if officers left en masse over the threat of police defunding, what will they do when a mayor takes office who wants to abolish police? And she can say, oh, I've come away from that. To me, anyone who had that opinion, their judgment is so far gone, and I just can't trust them. So unless she comes in and she actually shows with her actions and her priorities that she doesn't hate the police, I'm going to continue to assume that she does. And so I think it's a concerning time for the city of Seattle and really King County at large. I mean, they have I'm not going to call him a socialist, but a uber progressive, let's say, and Gurmai Zahalai, who just took over the King County executive's office. He didn't support abolition, but he did support the idea of defunding or divesting from police in 2020. So it's very concerning to me, and we'll be watching both of them very closely.